Let me tell y'all something. If my son left home with a group of friends and everyone returned home except for him, there would be absolutely no explanation anyone could give me that would convince me or stop me from asking questions. That doesn't mean that I'm accusing anybody. It just means that I'm a mother who needs to know and would need to know exactly what happened to my child. And I would stay in y'all faces until somebody gave me an answer that not only gave me peace, but made sense. They would have to make it make sense. Let's go. What's up, y'all, and welcome to Life According to the podcast. As always, I am your host, Cree Cole, and you're now tuned in to Cree Said What. And yes, I know that y'all are used to my little kiki, but tonight we're having a discussion about something and somebody that's important in my life, my son, me being a mother, and the death of 18-year-old Nolan Xavier Wells. Make sure that we say his name, people. Nolan Xavier Wells. And the unanswered questions surrounding the final hours of his life. Now, before we get into it, let me make something very clear. This case remains under investigation. No one has been arrested, no one has been charged, and Nolan's official cause and manner of death have not been publicly released. I'm not here to accuse anybody of harming Nolan. I'm also not here to throw around all these different theories that have been put out there on social media. I want to discuss what's been reported. I want to discuss what remains unanswered and why this case is affecting so many Black mothers, including myself. I want to be clear about the perspective that I bring to this conversation. I am a Black woman. I am the mother of a Black son between the ages of 18 and 25. If you rock with me, you know Jaden is my life. He's 25 years old now. So when I look at this case, I can't separate myself from the question every mother eventually asks. What if this was my son? If my son left with a group of people and never returned, I would need to understand how everyone made it back except for him. I want to know who saw him last. Who was the person to have a conversation with him? If he did decide to stay behind, how was he supposed to get home? I would want to know what happened during every single minute, second between the last confirmed sighting and discovery of my son's body. Period. Asking those questions doesn't mean that I'm accusing anyone of doing something to him. It means I understand why his family can't accept an incomplete explanation and just simply move forward. When I ask, what if that were my son? I also recognize that this is not a hypothetical question for Nolan's mother. This is her reality. She sent her 18-year-old son out into the world expecting for him to come home. Now she's standing before the public asking questions and simply just trying to find out why he didn't. And the level of backlash that this woman's been getting. But before we walk through the reported facts, I want you to hear clearly and directly from Nolan's mother. Not any dramatized, me giving commentary about what I think of what she's saying and all that. No, no. Hear, hear her actual plea and what her and his father are doing it all for.
The last time we actually spoke with local authorities, which would be the sheriff's department, was I think a day or two after his body was found. That was only initiated by me. I sent him a text message. I was like, hey, this is Christine, Nolan's mom. I just want to see if there are any updates. Basically, he called back. There were no updates. He's like, we're still interviewing. And again, my concern, and also my husband's concern, was it was not even an hour that his body had been removed. And the sheriff came out and said, this is, accidental drowning. We don't think there's foul play. Again, that is why we're doing what we're doing and why we're moving the way we are. Because I sat there and asked them, please take this case as if this is your child, yes, your family member, your whatever. And they promised that they would. But when you make statements like that straight out the gate, that's an issue. We did meet with the DA. She did promise, transparency and all of this, all of that. However, damage has already been done, because now that's the narrative that's being pushed by the general public, who again know nothing really, only what they're hearing from other people. So in addition to that, it's all these things coming up. And at the end of the day, like I said before, any parent that would be in this situation, you would do anything to find out what happened to your child. And that is what we're here to do.
The mother, I felt every word of that. This is why Nolan's family continuing to ask questions shouldn't be treated as an accusation or an attempt to create a story that isn't there. A mother shouldn't have to accept an incomplete explanation about how her son left with other people and never returned. She deserves to know what happened during the final hours of her son's life. She deserves a complete timeline, a thorough investigation, transparent answers that are actually supported by evidence. Her grief and her questions should remain the center of this conversation. Now let's walk through what happened and what's been reported. Xavier Wells was 18 years old and from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. I just happen to have some people that live in Louisville, Mississippi, which is absolutely nowhere near there. Never even heard of the place until this story broke. He was a student and a football player at Southwest Mississippi Community College. On July 4th, Nolan traveled by private boat with friends to Horn Island, a barrier island off the Mississippi Gulf Coast. The group Nolan arrived with later left the island without him. According to the information to investigators, Nolan reportedly chose to remain on the island because he expected to leave the island with someone else. Nolan's cell phone was not with him. It had been left on the boat he originally traveled on. After Nolan failed to return home, his mother reported him missing. A multi-agency search began the following day. On the morning of July 6th, a National Park Service ranger found Nolan's body in the water near the northwest tip of Horn Island. Dental records were used to confirm his identity. Authorities initially discussed a possible drowning and said there was no obvious signs of external trauma. However, that is not a final determination. I repeat, that is not a final determination. The investigation remains ongoing. Of course, once this story broke, it was viral. From East Coast to West Coast, North, South, from the Mason-Dixon line all the way up through New England. Everyone knows the name Nolan Xavier Wells. And there's been a lot of things reported. There's been a lot of podcasters like myself, social media personalities, quote unquote investigators who have all chimed in on this. And while some of them have been reporting responsibly as far as what's going on in these days since, because it's almost been a month now, on leading up to now, there have been a lot of narratives put out into the air based upon platforms like TMZ, the Shade Room, all these different people wanting to come on social media and speak out. When the reality of it is, early reports were confirmed that everyone involved had shut down their social media platforms per instructions of one of Nolan's friends' mother's behest. But since then, there have been so many different narratives put out there, and at the end of the day, one thing remains clear: Nolan will never walk through his mother and father's front door again. One of the most discussed pieces of this case is a CITO call placed the afternoon of July 4th. Someone aboard the boat that Nolan was reportedly traveling on reported that the bilge pump had stopped working on the boat. It stopped working, and now the boat was taking on water. When the dispatcher asked whether everyone was aboard and in good health, the caller responded everyone was on board. The caller reportedly estimated that approximately 7 people were aboard. The statement has caused confusion because Nolan reportedly was not on the boat when the boat left the island, or at least that is what his friends initially told his mother. The recording also contained background conversation that people online have interpreted in several different ways. Nancy Grace examined and enhanced her version of the call on the Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. During the discussion, she and her guests addressed what they believe they may have heard in the background, including a possible reference to Nolan's name and a disputed phrase that some listeners interpret as a question about whether someone was dead. Before we continue, we're going to listen to Nancy Grace, because y'all know, if y'all know like I know, once Nancy Grace gets hooked to a case, baby, whether the general public gets the outcome that we all know should happen or that we want to happen, once it receives that level of attention, that Nancy Grace attention, honey, you're gonna have to put up a show up. Because even if Nolan's parents go quiet, Nancy Grace will drag his hell. So y'all check this out.
News tonight in the Nolan Wells investigation, enhanced distress call audio bombshell. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
He was face down on the beach right at the water's edge.
If he was sent face down, that also doesn't make sense to me. If he's face down, wouldn't blood pool just by nature of gravity this way?
So right now, we've got a lot of questions, but as the second doctor says, this is all still pending investigation.
If this were your child, wouldn't you want to know what happened?
Tito Assistance, Vicky speaking. How can I help you?
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership.
All right, of course. How far is the work coming up, sir? Can you give me a description? Ankles? Hello?
What'd you say? Hey,
Yes, how far is the water coming up, sir?
it's coming up. We're just thinking. I don't know. Like we're going down.
What did we just hear?
After watching that report, I completely understand why that would immediately raise some concerns. If you listen after being told what words to expect, it may sound exactly like the words are being said. But unfortunately, unclear audio can also be affected by someone called an auditory priming. Once someone tells us what they believe they hear, our minds can begin searching for an identifying phrase that's the same. That is why I don't want to declare that the voices said Nolan, is he dead, or any other disputed phrase unless qualified audio experts can confirm it. Nolan's family retained experts to examine the call, but no official analysis confirming those background statements have been publicly released. I also want to be responsible when discussing the caller's use of the word everyone. Everyone may have meant everyone the caller expected to be aboard that at the moment. The recording by itself does not prove that Nolan was on the boat or that the caller was intentionally trying to mislead the dispatcher. However, I completely understand why Nolan's family would want the statement examined alongside the passenger count, witness accounts, phone records, videos, and the complete timeline. The call raises legitimate questions, but those questions should not be presented as conclusions before the evidence is available. Nolan's family commissioned a second independent autopsy. The preliminary findings listed his cause of manner of death as undetermined pending investigation. The independent pathologist reportedly found no fractures, no deep tissue injuries. An area of red discoloration was observed on the back of Nolan's head, but the pathologist could not determine what caused it. The examination was also limited by decomposition and by tissue and organs that had already been removed during the state autopsy for further examination. The detail has fueled online claims that Nolan was strangled. However, the independent pathologist did not say that that the tissue was removed, that proved strangulation at all. And I think it's really irresponsible for a lot of people to be saying, so we know what that means. I'm not saying that nothing happened. While I do believe that something happened that they're not saying. The second examination could not determine Nolan's condition before he entered the water, whether he entered consciously or unconsciously, or whether his entry was voluntary or forced. Those are important distinctions. Saying that something couldn't be determined is not the same thing as confirming that a crime occurred. But it also means that there are still and still remain legitimate, significant questions that deserve answers. If Nolan was my baby, these are some of the questions that I would need answers. Who was the last person to see him alive? Who did Nolan believe would take him home? Did that person know Nolan was dependent on them? Why did Nolan remain on the island without his damn phone? Was Nolan seen entering the water? Did anybody see him go in? Was his physical and mental condition where it was supposed to be when he was last seen? Who can be identified as speaking in the background of that CTO call? Can independent experts determine what was actually said? Does the estimated number of people aboard the boat match the confirmed passenger list? What do the phones, messages, videos, timestamps, location records, like, what do all those say? Does the complete timeline match the accounts given by everyone involved? And what does the official autopsy reveal about how Nolan died? Because regardless of what everyone has been hearing on the internet from social media personalities, radio hosts, blogs, all the things, the state of Mississippi has not concluded their investigation of what happened. Like, these are not accusations. These are reasonable questions from a family trying to understand how their 18-year-old son went out with people and never came home. So I know that it seems like a lot, and there's always the underlying why you let your child go out with all them unseasoned people, right? You know, we can't trust the unseasoned people, especially right now in a time like this when the United States of America, when the citizens cast a vote in 2024 to try racism full blown in the 2020s. How could you let this happen? But the reality of it is, people are still living their whole full lives, a lot of them in the manner in which they always did. The hatred is loud, but it's no louder than it's always been. Except for the pinholes, the random announcements of it from the White House. So there's a lot of people who their friends are still their friends, especially when it comes to our kids. Now that we discussed what the actual reports say, what the actual news anchor said, what the actual facts say, let's talk about what they're saying on social media. Like, I touched on it a little bit, but we can get into it. We can get into it. Some of the questions are fair. Like, some of the conclusions are a little premature, and some of them that are being shared have not been verified. I don't care how many Google searches. People always talk about Google is free, but baby, Google gonna show you what's been most searched. Google is going to respond, as well as AI is going to respond to what you want to know. It tracks your trends of what you research beyond what you type into their actual platforms. That is how algorithms work. At this point, everything that we use online is based and runs off of an algorithm. One of the most common reactions is real friends would never leave them behind. And I second that. I've had instances where my son has gotten in shit because he refused to step away, step aside, or get gone through when it comes to his friends, because he's going to stay right there and be 10 toes down. Many people believe that Nolan's friends should have made sure he had a confirmed way home before leaving the island, based upon the information that they provided, what they said happened, which was that he decided to stay back on the island with the girl. Seemed like a simple enough explanation to me. Sounds like an explanation that an 18 to 19-year-old would give when asked a question, especially a tricky question when you're trying to explain away why you did not stick around for your friend. It's about a girl. Especially taking the fact that his phone was still supposedly on the boat. Others argue that if Nolan was an adult who voluntarily chose to stay and said he had another ride, his friends may not have had any questions to believe that he was in danger. However, even if, and this is just my opinion, because we're talking about social media, I'm a social media, I'm a content creator. In my opinion, I don't care. Right now, me and my circle are all in our 40s. Baby, you tell me that you staying here with XYZ sis, you going to tell me, you gonna have to tell me how you getting home. You're gonna have to tell me how you getting home. You probably going at big 40, at big 40 something. You're gonna have to share your location too. There's no level of adulthood that justifies not looking out for the people that look out for you. Another popular reaction is that there must be more to this story. People want to know who Nolan expected to leave with and whether he ever boarded another boat. They also want to understand what happened during the gap between his last confirmed sighting and the discovery of his body. Because his last confirmed sighting, when his mother retrieved his phone and when he was found, were not boom, 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 boom. It's not the way that happened. All of this happened over the course of 3 days. And it was reported that the father actually had to go and retrieve the phone and only his own words. And he was only given the phone after being given the runaround. So the CISO recording has intensified all of the suspicions. Some listeners believe that the background voices reveal important information. Others hear nothing more than chaotic and unclear conversation about a boat emergency. Some social media users have already decided that Nolan was murdered and that it is a cover-up. At this time, authorities have not publicly classified Nolan's death as a homicide, and no one has been charged. And I believe that the fear is, especially from our community, is like in so many other cases that have not been popularized, have not been made national news. A lot of times, neither ever occurs. There's never any charges. No one ever goes to jail. And everyone is just expected to move on. There are also people who believe that an accidental drowning remains possible and that social media has turned an unexplained death into a murder investigation without sufficient evidence. Every investigation is a murder investigation until there is more evidence. And that's not social media. That's not social media. That's actual legal fact. From an investigation standpoint, it's a murder until it's not. The truth is, we don't currently have enough publicly confirmed information to declare exactly what happened. For generations, Black families have had to fight for missing loved ones to receive attention, suspicious deaths to be investigated thoroughly, and unanswered questions to be taken seriously. That history does not prove what happened to Nolan. It should not be used to declare anyone guilty or assign a racial motive where one has not been established. But it does help explain why so many Black mothers hear this story and feel something deeper than curiosity. We know what it feels like to worry that our sons may be misunderstood. We know the fear of our sons being blamed before anyone understands what actually happened. We know that our sons can be viewed as older, stronger, less vulnerable than they truly are. And we have seen families forced to make noise before their children's cases ever receive the attention they deserve. That history creates caution. It creates fear. It creates a need for transparency. And in the current climate that we're in, those things are true and necessary in every single area of our lives. Wanting a complete investigation is not the same as spreading a conspiracy. Questioning an incomplete timeline is not the same as accusing someone of murder. Acknowledging history is not the same as claiming that history proves what happens in this particular case either. I also believe we have to have a responsibility to be careful because people who haven't been arrested or charged shouldn't be threatened, harassed, declared guilty because of an online theory. We cannot demand a fair investigation while denying fairness to people being discussed. We can have questions. We can point out the inconsistencies. We can ask experts to examine the CTO recording carefully. We can demand that investigators examine every witness statement, phone record, video, and piece of physical evidence. But we should not manufacture certainty where certainty does not exist. Most importantly, Nolan cannot become secondary to the theory surrounding the death. He was not just a name in a headline or the subject of a viral story. He was an 18-year-old young man. He was a son. He was a student, an athlete, and someone whose family expected him to return home. Tonight's Cree Said question of the night. Now that we've had some time to kind of, because all of this happened a month ago, and I did not want to jump the gun and start spewing things out across the internet because I feel like I feel, right? I feel like I feel. But I know how I feel and how I felt when things have gone on with my child and even the people who claim to advocate or be advocating for him are low-key disrespecting his legacy and his name. So the Cree Said question of the night is, how do we demand transparency and accountability in the Nolan Wells death without turning unanswered questions into accusations? Can we hold space for Nolan's family to acknowledge the historical concerns of Black families and insist upon a complete investigation while still allowing the evidence to determine what happened? Let me know where you stand in the comments. I didn't want to script my final takeaway tonight because I need to speak from my heart and not from a page. As a Black woman and the mother of a young Black man, this story hit differently for me. I can't tell you the number of nights that I have sat up waiting to hear my front door open or my son's footsteps come down the hall to go into his bedroom. And not because I feel like he's in any danger. I know that he's out with his cousins. He's out with his friends he's had since he's been 7, 8 years old. They're going to places that they're familiar with, where they know other people who will be there. And knowing all of that does not change me wanting to know that he's okay, wanting to know that he made it home. In the Black community, one thing that is clear and that we are all taught is that no matter what happens, you make it home. We're taught that when we go out with other people, I don't care what kind of jobs parents have, what type of neighborhoods your parents lived in, they taught you that when you leave together, you come home together. You don't leave nobody behind. And us knowing that within our community, that's why it's so hard for us to accept that in a situation where if Nolan said he was going to stay behind, in a situation where that young man said that he was with a group of people who weren't raised in the same manner and provided all of the same lessons because it wasn't necessary for them to have them, that none of them, they asked the question, why didn't none of his friends make sure that he had his phone and make sure that he had a ride? In my opinion, I'm thinking about it with my son, they didn't do it because that's not something that they were raised to do. That's something that we're raised to do. That's something that we teach our children. I've experienced, thank God, I can talk to my son and I can see my son after this, but I've experienced my son not returning home. Luckily, by the grace of God, I was able to find out what was going on and he was okay. But honey, there's no feeling like it. There's no feeling like it. I don't care. A lot of times people with no kids like to say, that they understand. No, you don't. No, you don't. You being a kid once upon a time don't make you qualified. You watching somebody raise their kid don't make you qualified. You saw it. You could explain it, but you don't understand it. You don't know what it feels like. You know what it feels like to be an aunt that saw it. You know what it feels like to be a best friend that saw it. You know what it feels like to be a parent, a grandparent, or who saw it. What you don't know what it feels like to be a mother and fear. Live with a healthy dose of fear that your son, your child, your daughter may not make it home. So with that being said, when I want us to be a lot more responsible when it comes to what we put out here into the internet, what we say, who we accuse, why we accuse them. I'm not claiming to know what happened to Nolan Wells. I'm saying his life matters, his family's questions matter, and they deserve complete and utter transparency. Because there's no feeling like it. You could have I'm telling you, you could have experienced in your lifetime someone that you love not coming home. But until you feel that and you experience that when it comes to someone who literally was born and built from your flesh and blood, someone that literally was physically a part of you to the point where you felt them develop developing before they ever had an arm, a leg, you wouldn't understand. But we can try to be better. And we can give grace where grace is due. And Nolan Wells' mother and father deserve that grace with everything that they've gone through and going through. This is my take on the situation. This is my take. But now I want to hear yours. Leave your answers to tonight's Cree Says What question in the comments, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this episode. Share with anybody who has questions, wants to know what's going on, and you've been talking to them, and you've been keeping up with actually going on, and they keep telling you all these wild things they don't heard on the internet. Send this to them. Send this to them. This has been another episode of Life According to Cree, the podcast, and you've been tuned into Cree Said What. Remember, loving yourself first isn't selfish. is learning to love yourself in a way that teaches you how to love others better. I will see you all on Thursday night for Tapped In with Cree Cole. And until then, bye.